everyone, this is Gale from PaulGaleNetwork.com, and thank you for joining me today for video game sales. It is February 24th, 2022, and in today's video, we are going to check out the hardware and software reports coming out of Japan, courtesy of Famitsu, that represent the week of February 14th through February 20th, 2022. We're going to begin with the hardware side of things. The number one best-selling system of the week was the Nintendo Switch, which moved 96,929 units. PlayStation 5 came in at second, selling 25,434. Xbox Series did 4,799, coming in third. The Nintendo 3DS came in at fourth, selling 364 units. And in fifth place was the PlayStation 4, which moved 11 units. An interesting takeaway is that Nintendo Switch is week after week doing better than it did for the respective week last year. Last year, you could see here, it did 74,000 for the week, and this week, 96,000. That's a good 22,700 units more in sales, and that's pretty significant. Of course, it's going to be interesting to see if Nintendo Switch can maintain this momentum all year long. 2021, after all, had a really powerful boost in March, courtesy of Monster Hunter Rise, and 2020 had a really powerful boost in March, courtesy of Animal Crossing. I don't think we have as powerful as a jump in March this time around as one of those two games, but maybe not. Kirby and the Forgotten Land comes out in March, and I think that's going to do very well. Animal Crossing was such a polarizing game. It also hit, in the very beginning of the pandemic, so there were fewer people out there who had Nintendo Switches, so there were a greater amount of people that were potential buyers that bought the system. It timed up well with the type of game it was, especially with the multiplayer component, etc. So a lot of new Nintendo Switch consoles were purchased in the month of March, and that kind of, was the case throughout the whole year in Japan and worldwide, but specifically in Japan in this case. Last year, not necessarily because of pandemic or whatever, people were already under those kind of guidelines and so forth for a year at that point. But Monster Hunter Rise, the Monster Hunter series only got bigger thanks to World. It was already successful in Japan, but World kind of made it bigger worldwide. But still, speaking of Japan, Monster Hunter Rise for Nintendo Switch was we are big Monster Hunter fans, let's buy this game. If you did not already own a Nintendo Switch, because the titles like Super Mario Odyssey, Splatoon, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, those core Nintendo franchises, a reason why many people buy Nintendo Switch, wasn't captivating enough of a reason for you to buy the console. Monster Hunter Rise. Okay, we saw an increase in unit sales as well. Kirby. We're getting to a point of market saturation in Japan, so obviously year in and year out, fewer and fewer people remain in Japan that have yet to buy a console. Not to say that it's a 1-to-1 ratio, nor is that ever going to be the case probably, where every person in Japan is the owner of a piece of video game hardware. However, there are still a good amount of people that don't have a Nintendo Switch yet. There are 23.84 million people that do, so the audience still exists in a good capacity of potentials. It's just, despite Kirby and the Forgotten Land definitely being a big software mover, will it also drive hardware? You could argue that, there are already a lot of people that have a system, so there's that case, and a lot of people that already would want to own the system for that type of game have one. People that were already buying the system for Mario Odyssey, they're not going to buy another system for Kirby. They already have it. So will Kirby help drive hardware? I think it will to an extent, because there will be some people that buy it for the first time, the console, the Nintendo Switch that is, because even though they could have purchased the system in the last 5 years to play Mario Odyssey, to play Donkey Kong, to play Splatoon, other games that are, similar in some capacity to Kirby, maybe that didn't hook them. but Kirby is, because they like that franchise more. They like that IP more. There are some Nintendo fans that kind of like Nintendo broad, and then some Nintendo fans that specifically like Kirby and don't really care about Mario or Pokemon, or like Mario or Pokemon but aren't the biggest fans of Zelda and stuff like that. So Kirby's audience kind of meshes well with the likes of Mario and stuff, but uh, an ambitious Kirby game, I think, has the potential to drive hardware more. I will say this about 2022, and I've mentioned this before. I think the software lineup looks so powerful by the likes of, starting off with Arceus and going into Triangle Strategy and Kirby and the Forgotten Land and Splatoon 3 and Breath of the Wild 2 and Bayonetta 3. There's just a lot of big heavy hitters scattered throughout that I think we're going to see a lot of weeks this year where hardware is up and software is going to top 2021. Hardware, that's a close bet. I'm putting it at number 3, at third place, going 2020, 2021, 2022, and then the years prior. But I wouldn't be entirely surprised if somehow Nintendo Switch is able to sell more hardware this year than last. There's a chip shortage issue going on. There is stock and inventory that Nintendo can only pump out so much. But this time around, instead of having that little bit of a dip between July and September because of the Nintendo Switch OLED model being announced and people taking their time waiting and then seeing that sales explode in October, now all the systems, all 3 SKUs, are already available. So it's just about the hardware manufacturing lines. Can we get enough out there? So 2022 has a chance at surpassing 2021, but we'll see. It's overall really good to see some health. It's down from the previous week. That's okay. Most importantly, it's up from last year. Year to year, we have 922,000 this year versus last year's 1,147,000. So it already is behind, but it looks like it's slowly catching up. Time will tell just how even it turns out. PlayStation 5 had a huge boost, and that is largely in thanks to Sony pumping the amount of units out there for the launch of Horizon Forbidden West. And this also goes to show that, if Sony was regularly dishing out 20,000 plus units per week, they probably would be selling that amount every week. They're just choosing not to disperse more units towards the West. And hey, that's their decision. But when you pump out 25,434, and when you have a big game like Horizon, that's a healthy marriage, and that's going to help drive software sales and hardware sales. Big jump over the previous week. On the Xbox Series side, down, but still a healthy number of 4,799 compared to last week's 5,955. It's higher than last year's in a great capacity. PlayStation 5 up from last year's by a fair amount. 3DS, it's on its way out. We cover this every week though because it's still here. PlayStation 4 definitely on the way out, but hey, it managed to sell 7 more. You could even say those are 7 more people that were buying into the hype, perhaps, of Horizon Forbidden West, didn't want to buy a PlayStation 5, heard good things from friends or whatever about Horizon Zero Dawn, thought, I could buy it. Is that the reason for the increase of 4 to 11 rather, from last week to this week? Probably. That sounds reasonable. If you look at a little bit more of the breakdown, PS5 disc version definitely leads the way over the digital. Xbox Series, it's the one that sold more than the S over X, I should say. On the Nintendo Switch side of things, OLED model, clearly number 1 in terms of demand, which is interesting because it's a $50 more expensive model, but people see the value in it, that it's a bigger screen, it's a better quality screen, a brighter screen, a better battery life, a better kickstand, an improved dock, Ethernet port capabilities, better speakers, more internal storage. Yeah, you're actually getting quite a bit, but rather than a price drop into the generation is a price increase. So hey, I'm happy that OLED model is doing well. I think it's a great unit. we've got the base Switch coming in at second and the Lite coming in third, and that's about normal for that side of things. If we look into the software portion, this is pretty cool too because everyone's eating more or less. The number one best-selling game of the week was the newly released Token Ranba Warriors for the Nintendo Switch, which sold 113,159 units. That's a big debut. Pokemon Legends Arceus got knocked off its first place spot to second place, selling 84,925 copies. Physical units alone in Japan now, it has surpassed 2 million. Very cool. In third is Horizon Forbidden West on PS4, which did 48,476. In fourth is the PlayStation 5 version of Horizon Forbidden West, which sold just under, moving 43,012 copies. In fifth place was Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and that did 13,406. In sixth was Mario Party Superstars, which did 10,651. In seventh was Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, which sold 9,268 copies. In eighth was the newly released The King of Fighters 15 by SNK for the PlayStation 4, and it sold 9,062. Not a very good debut. I'm happy that it charted, but selling under 10,000 for a pretty established franchise like King of Fighters kind of seems like a little bit of a mistake on SNK's part to not have that game also debut on Nintendo Switch. Whether it could or couldn't, that could be it. If it could, and they just didn't, that's a mistake. If they attempted to and they couldn't get it to work, then I understand. But really, if you're releasing a 2D fighter in 2022, and if it's running on PS4, something like a Samurai Showdown, which is a couple of years old at this point, or Dragon Ball FighterZ, you should try to make that game come out on Nintendo Switch because it's becoming more and more of a popular system for multiple genres, but for the fighting genre, it's very convenient as each console has two controllers that when going sideways, boom, out of the box, you've got two-player multiplayer, which is, you want to release a game on a platform where there is the most ease of access for people to maximize their enjoyment out of the game. If you're releasing a game that's only multiplayer, and if the console doesn't include out of the box two controllers, that's one extra little hurdle, right? Someone has to buy a second controller. If you're releasing a game that greatly benefits from VR and your system doesn't have VR out of the box, that's one extra barrier that you have to cross through to get players to maximize the VR portion of it. Some people won't dive into that because of the expense. Some people might not even buy the game in the first place out of principle because even though they could enjoy some of the game without the VR, they'll choose to not buy it altogether because that mental barrier is, I don't want to buy something knowing that I could be experiencing more, but I'm not going to. That exists too. If you're releasing a game that's online only and the console is not free to play online or doesn't include some type of free trial, that's a little bit of a barrier. How much enjoyment can I get out of Splatoon 2 if I have to pay? Well, back when Splatoon 2 came out, Nintendo Switch Online didn't exist yet. It was still free. Nintendo Switch to play online was free for the first 18 months of its existence. From March 2017 to September 2018, you didn't have to, pay at all. When Splatoon 3 comes out, depending on the shift in, is it primarily online? Is it primarily first, solo player? If it's all online, that's one little barrier. However, at this point, it's also a very established franchise that's doing well. At this point, also, a lot of people have online. You know what I mean? So the further into a generation you get, that's kind of when you get to be a little bit more creative, a little bit more ambitious with your titles because, multiple people have multiple controllers at this point. Multiple people have the online setup. They have, in some cases, a lot smaller percentage though, VR headsets. So that's when you could start doing those types of things. But rewinding back to the King of Fighters 15, you know that, with the exception of Nintendo Switch Lite, every Nintendo Switch owner can play and take advantage of the two-player portion of your game out of the box. Is that big enough of a driving component? Maybe not necessarily, but it helps. You know, you have to still probably play online, unless if it's one of those free games to play online, like Fortnite, for instance. But probably you have to pay. However, yeah, SNK. This is a game that, if it could run on Nintendo Switch, it really should have. And I'm not saying like, oh, the Nintendo Switch version would have probably done 100,000 in its opening week, but maybe it would have fared better, or maybe your combined efforts would still be only 20,000 between the two versions. But you got to look at it from a how much more money and how much more time and effort did it cost to make those two SKUs? Was that extra 10,000 that the Nintendo Switch version would do worth it? And in the long run, is it worth it? I know that developers take all of those things into consideration. Is this a $2 million more of work to only earn $1.8 million more from, said SKU? Now then you're losing. Or was this like $1 million extra budget to make this port work, but you're going to get 1.1 out of it? Is that worth it? I get it. So, without being a developer myself, but being really in tune with the development community by having a lot of friends that are developers, producers, artists, musicians, folks that work in the video game industry on a specific, making the games kind of thing, I talk about this with them, and I get this, one-to-one relationship where these are the decisions that are made. And I know I spent a lot of time deviating from typical video game sales talk to specifically go on King of Fighters, but it seems like a really missed opportunity for when these smaller Japanese-made or Western-made games come out only on a PS4 or PS4 Xbox One, and it doesn't look like it's an overwhelmingly ambitious title that's really pushing those systems to the max. Because you could say, all right, the games that are really pushing PS4 and Xbox One to the max, where they're barely running on them, on those base vanilla models, not going into 1X or PS4 Pro territory, fine. Excuse me. Maybe too much compromise is needed to make it run on Nintendo Switch. Maybe it would be a completely different game. You'd have to make a completely different SKU from the ground up, or release such a poor port that it wouldn't sell, and it would, if anything, hurt the image. I understand that. But the games that are like, yeah, this is a kind of easy thing to run, they should all be multi-platform, because the little amount of effort that you're putting in, the little amount of cost, you're going to see rewarded enough more. But hey, it could be a game that gets ported eventually, right? We'll see. That being said, let's go back into the chart. Number 9 is Minecraft on Nintendo Switch, which did 8,503 copies. And in 10th place is Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Pokemon Shining Pearl, which sold 6,876 copies. Speaking of Pokemon, this Sunday is Pokemon Day, February 27th, and there's going to be a Pokemon Presents, so that's pretty exciting news right there. It'll be interesting to see, what do we get? Do we get some new update on Pokemon Legends Arceus? Something on Diamond and Pearl remakes? A tease at a brand new game like a Pokken Tournament 2 or Generation 9 Pokemon? First sneak peek? Will we get a sales update at the very least on Pokemon Legends Arceus? We do know that as of February 20th, which was last week, Pokemon Legends Arceus officially surpassed 8 million. It happened sometime in the week earlier than the 20th. I don't know exactly when, 16th, 17th, something like that. But the game is now at over 8 million worldwide. I mentioned it in a little mini video game sales update a couple of days ago about that exclusive news. So that's pretty cool. It could even be 9 by now. It definitely will hit 9 if it hasn't already, but it'll hit 9 by March 4th. By March 1st. So ahead of the Nintendo Switch 5th anniversary, we'll have one more 9 million seller on the console. Maybe even 10. Maybe with the anticipation of Pokemon Day and the word of mouth, we get a little bit of an increase, and we're looking at 10 million. But that's kind of ambitious, but yeah, possible. We'll see. But Pokemon Day is coming up. That's exciting. I know that's not a part of video game sales talk, but hey, when we get into these conversations, sometimes we deviate beyond sales and go into a little bit of a deep dive on the King of Fighters 15 and trying to throw some analysis that way on what should have SNK done and why they might not have done it. Maybe they couldn't have. There also is this, and I will say this: some developers intentionally release the Nintendo Switch version later so that they could get that double dip market. People, if they have the Nintendo Switch version and it's of comparable equal parity to a PlayStation 4 or Xbox One version, and if you release them at the same time, you might not have people say, okay, I'm going to skip out on this Xbox One version of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 because the Nintendo Switch 1 is comparable enough. Yeah, I'm just going to get it on Nintendo Switch and just call it a day. Then it wouldn't sell at all on Xbox One. I mean, it would still sell, but you wouldn't have people buying both from the beginning. If you release it strategically first on PS4 and Xbox One, you have the people say, it's not coming out on Switch. I really want this game. I'm going to buy it. Several months later, it's coming out on Switch now? Well, I had a lot of fun. Some people will say, that fun was good enough for me. I'm good. Some people, I really liked it so much that, yeah, I'm going to buy it again because I want that experience on the go. And that's how you got that second sale. If you release them both at once, you probably wouldn't get those two sales. You would have either people saying, oh no, I want it to be a little bit better graphics and buy it here, or no, I want that dual nature and have it here. Not necessarily both. If you release it on Nintendo Switch first, same thing. I already have a good, competent version of the game and portable. If several months later, this game comes out on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, and it's running a little bit better, is it better enough to make you want to buy it again on the flip side, or are you already invested saying, looks good, runs fine, and it's portable? Sweet. Why buy a second? That is another strategy that video game developers do, and by releasing it on Nintendo Switch second, you also have the people that are Nintendo Switch only owners that are definitely going to, buy the game. They might not necessarily be itching to buy an Xbox Series X or a PlayStation 5 just to play the game, but they already have a Nintendo Switch. They'll wait several months. Nintendo Switch has a robust library. There's always stuff to fill in. So unless if you're really hardcore about one franchise that comes out on the other system first, you're probably not going to go buy a whole other few $100 machine just to play it several months early, right? There's a lot that goes into video game development strategy, how much money you're going to make out of how much effort that you put in. The reality that is double dipping is a thing. Maximizing each game's individual sales per SKU. A lot of people, like I said before on the channel, wondered how come Pixel Remaster Final Fantasy games didn't come out on everything at first. Well, the easiest place that it was probably going to sell the lowest amount was Steam. You released it all on the same platforms at the same time, Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, that Steam version wouldn't sell nearly as well. Now you've got people that made a free Steam account just to play it. Existing Steam owners that purchased it because they wanted it. People that several months later, they're going to be hungry. Gosh, I want to play that on my Switch. I want to play that on my TV, They'll probably double dip at that point, but they wouldn't have double dipped the other way. If you had the opportunity to buy Final Fantasy 1 to 6 Pixel Remaster on your Xbox One, Series S, X, PlayStation 4, 5, Nintendo Switch, and then several months later bought it on Steam, come on, who's going to buy it on Steam at that point? Maybe some people, but it doesn't work the same way, right? So I get it. Yeah, it's all about making money. Making money for these developers, understandable. That's their business, but hopefully doing it in still a fair way, an ethical way that is pro-consumer, and more often than not, I think we get pretty awesome approaches in the video game industry where you just kind of know at the end of the day, if you're an early adopter, you're going to pay more. If you don't think that's fair, then find something else to play for several months and then go and buy it, right? It's kind of like movies in the, film industry. If you want to pay top dollar, you're going to go see a movie opening weekend, not own it, and pay $15 to watch it in theaters. 2 hours of your time costs $15. If you can wait 4 months, then you could buy it for $20, spending only $5 more and have it for eternity. How do you value your time? How do you value your money? You want Horizon Forbidden West now and you want it on PlayStation 5 that disc? You got to drop $70. You look at Sony's past and you see how long does it take Sony to drop a game to 40? Boom. How long does it take to drop it to 20 or to 10? You look at God of War and Spider-Man and Ratchet and Clank. You look at Returnal. You look at Ghost of Tsushima. Chances are Forbidden West, before the end of this year, will not be $70 anymore. Look at, this was made by Square Enix, but Guardians of the Galaxy, $70, $60 game, whatever. Like, you could get it really cheap by Black Friday. And that wasn't even several months. That's just a couple of months later. So there's that whole part of the video game industry. You could be the master of your own domain and you pick when you want to buy something. But, this is a hobby, but it's a very passionate hobby that people love. So if you're telling people like, all right, you get to buy Spyro the Dragon Trilogy now on PS4, or you could wait a year or so and buy it on Nintendo Switch. How badly do you want that game? Can you wait? Is there enough reason? Are there enough games to play to keep you occupied in 12 months? Then you can buy it on the platform you want, or you're going to buy it on PS4 now and just enjoy it. And then are you a double dipper, or are you like, no, I got enough out of me, right? Problem is sometimes video game companies aren't necessarily clear, but that's also part of the strategy. If they were clear and they told you this is the exact time frame and this is exactly the dates that we're going to be dropping the prices, it would be a probably pretty bad business strategy. But could you imagine if, Nintendo was like, all right, here are our games, and 6 months later we're going to have a temporary eShop price of 12% off on these titles and 33% off on these titles, and then on Black Friday we're officially doing a buy one get one half off kind of thing, partnering up with GameStop and Target and Walmart and Best Buy. If you knew that going ahead, right now you could kind of figure it out. You could kind of anticipate what's to come based off of history. But if you officially knew, you would see probably some people hold off on certain things, right? It's that unknown that makes people jump in now, and some people don't, but it makes a lot jump in, and that's how video games are able to come out at this price and then later on drop at this price, and it's exciting stuff. I'm actually glad that we deviated because we're still talking video game sales, even though we got a little bit further into some video game developer dynamics and thought processes behind, why do games come out when they do, and so forth. Yeah, that ended up being a pretty long video game sales discussion. Thank you for watching, and even talking about Pokemon Day, that was about as far away from sales as we got today, but that was still fun too because relevant to Diamond and Pearl, because you could even say after Pokemon Day, will Diamond and Pearl's remakes go up next week? Will Arceus have any up or at least a softer drop? This drop right here is not bad from the previous week. But yeah, that's going to do it for Video Game News with PGN. Thank you for watching. This is Paul Gale Network signing out. Hope you all have a good rest of your day. Take it easy. Bye. And as always, thank you to Chris1964 from the InstallBaseForum.com forums for nicely putting together the software and hardware charts together from Famitsu in today's video.